Hey everybody, I am back with a new comic book review, and this one is War Machine. Perfect time for Black History Month. So, I figured, okay, I wanted to do another like an Iron Man comic review because I haven't done one in a long while. But I figured, wait a minute, why don't I do one for like War Machine? And so, yeah, and why the heck not? So so it's War Machine. Before I get to the review of the comic, please do me a huge favor and leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the character War Machine. Do you have a favorite War Machine comic? Do you have a favorite moment in War Machine in the MCU? Do you ever, out of all the Iron Man TV shows, do you have a favorite War Machine interpretation, moment, whatever? Uh, yeah. And this one, what was it? Is written. It's called Armor. The Armor and the Attitude. James Rhodes, The Armor and the Attitude. Written by Lynn Kaminsky and Scott Benson. And this is obviously, came out in 1995. So super 90s. And obviously, I do like, I say many times, there's so much 90s, art that I really enjoy. And this one, at least until in the last, 5 to 10 issues, the, art kind of, was, the art was slapping until the last 5 issues. But we'll get to that soon. But yeah, so we got James Rhodes piloting, honestly, one of my favorite looks of War Machine. So right now, this is around the time when Force Works was really like a big deal. It was like a, West Coast Avengers thing, which he helps out with them every once in a while, but he's not like a actual member. And Stark was pretty much running Stark Enterprises out in LA, like you typically would see in the MCU for Iron Man 3. 2 and 3, I think. Anyway, so James meets up with his girlfriend Ray, Rae, Ray, and he's pretty much getting off his chest about, about his background, him being War Machine, and what Stark pretty much left him like a big old mess for him to clean up, and that was like a big thing in the 90s. If you watch like the 90s Iron Man TV show, it was always like a thing where Rhodey gets kind of pissy over, what Tony Stark does, and it's like Secretary, you shut me out, man. Like, I'm right here. I'm trying to be your best friend, but you keep doing that's like, I don't know. At the time, I guess I was trying to be sympathetic, but as I got older, he does come across pretty whiny about I won't say not taking any type of accountability, but it's just I don't know. Reading through this kind of drudged up that memory. And it, matter of fact, they rehashed that in Iron Man Armored Adventures. Now I'm thinking about it. It's I'm your best friend, man. You could have just burned me on board. And I was like, God. It was I don't know why they do that to Rhodey, where it's yeah, I get it, you're best friends. I don't tell my best friends every little doggo thing. They don't I feel they don't really need to know, and they don't be pissy about it. I don't know. It's just looking on it, it's man, this is so ridiculous just to get drama. But he regales her about how he first met Tony when early on when he donned his Mark I armor to escape his captives, and Rhodey, who is a military man, normally Air Force, but he helped Tony escape. He brought him on as like a liaison for him, and every once in a while he helped Don, like when every once in a while when Tony is incapacitated, Rhodey's the one who takes up the mantle of Iron Man to do like Avengers work and everything like that. This is early on when he was doing the whole Iron Man's Tony's bodyguard thing. Matter of fact, the most notable time that people would remember Rhodey pretend to be Iron Man, but nobody knew it was like a him underneath, or didn't know at all who was underneath. And they always get stunned and it was like, oh, it was a black man and woo woo. It was during like the Secret Wars when all the heroes and villains were like transported to Battle World and everything like that. That's probably the most notable time we seen Rhodey as Iron Man, and nobody knew who was underneath. I think a few people probably knew it was like Tony Stark. But I digress. And of course, he's like don't want to take over Stark Enterprises. It kind of feels like he's just constantly in Tony Stark's shadow in a way. So Ray decides to take him to meet a very important figure named Vincent Sameo, or Satueo, who's from this fictional African country, Amani, who escaped from the dictatorship of this, general over there. And he wants to bring Jim on board to this organization, peacekeeping organization he wants to call World Watch. Now, at first, James ain't interested. He doesn't want to take part in any type of leadership from any big company because it's like, his own personal hangups. That's where we meet this dictator who's mounting a plan to kidnap Satueo to bring back to Amani so he can face trial, but ultimately he just wants him executed. And his dude clearly is freaking crazy. Which ultimately he does end up hijacking a plane that Vincent is on, kidnapping him and flying the plane back to Imani. Once word gets out, James is, because he looks up to this guy. He read his books. He looked at him as like almost like a one of like a civil rights leader type of figure. He very come across a very like a Martin Luther King type figure. So James, is vehemently upset, and he goes to Nick Fury to get, hopefully SHIELD can get involved and go rescue him, but Nick can't do anything because there's red tape and so much involved. He even tried to contact some of the Avengers, and they can't get caught up in like political strife, and is like not a good look and everything like that. That's like, and I think one of them is Captain America, and it's like, dude, don't y'all get caught up in political whatchamacallits, almost all the time when dealing with a particular villain? Hell, how many times y'all dealt with Doctor Doom? You couldn't just. But I get it. International incidents, they don't want to, think like the police in the world or anything like that. But James ain't having none of that. So he decides to don his War Machine armor and go off to deal with the situation himself. We also see a little bit of Deathlock and Cable, who monitoring this situation respectively on their own uh, computers, especially when War Machine arrives and starts kicking ass, knocking down planes. Of course, making sure the pilots escape as well. But he's knocking down planes and taking on tanks and all this other stuff. I love the suit up moment. See, this is one of my favorite looks of War Machine. I know it's very 90s, but I don't know, something about that silver gray on top of that, grayish white look. That's like, God, that is like a good like a good color composition. And he's just like, loaded head to toe with weaponry. That's why they call him War Machine. So as he's taking down all these soldiers, Cable shows up and try to let War Machine know, like, look, I know what you're trying to do. Don't do it. Because Cable's always trying to monitoring the timeline, make sure everything is like, things don't go awry. It has to go where it needs to go. And Situeo has to go through what he's going through. And with War Machine here, interrupts that. War Machine ain't trying to listen to none of that. He tells him, step aside or I have to go through you. And of course, it ends up with a, classic, superhero versus superhero fight. Always get one of these. But at the very least, there is a reason for it. It isn't just like, oh, I never met you before. You look like a bad guy because of your costume punch. Because it is like, differences of opinion. And then, of course, Deathlock shows up. So it's like a three-way superhero fight. Until eventually, the general's military personnel shows up and starts, going after both of them. Like all three of them. But, of course, Cable, using his teleporter, dips out, leaving War Machine and Deathlock to fend for themselves. Meanwhile, the general's beating the crap out of Vincent. And then Vincent had like a brief talk with the general's advisor. He's only called the advisor. Now, he seems very interesting, but I'm going to cut to the chase. Don't get too attached or too invested in this mysterious figure. He is known as the advisor. We don't get no... he shows up at least one other time in a different arc. Just once in one panel. And I'm pretty sure the next time we see him will be in some kind of Force Works kind of or Iron Man type of story that wasn't a part of this 25 issue run. And it's unresolved who this guy is. Matter of fact, I tried looking this up. Apparently don't solve nothing with this character. I looked this up on the Marvel Wiki. He is known as the Advisor. And it's not even clear what even his power set is. It's just he managed to disappear and arrive, and he's some type of supernatural force that thrives on conflict. That's why he's, involved with helping this general, influence his lesser, baser instincts. But that's it. He thrives on discord, and he just called the advisor. That is it. That is lame. And of course, this is way back in the 90s. Not many people was collecting comics on the regular, or getting them online at the regular to keep up with monthly issues. So we never know what this guy is. He has some strange abilities, and that is it. Just able to disappear and seemingly can't be harmed. But apparently, Vincent has seen this guy once before in like Johannesburg and a couple other places. But we see him like light up a flame with his finger, and that's all. Uh, Thanks for the follow, man. But man, yeah, uh, that's one of those kind of cons I have immediately. I just want to bring up. Uh, yeah, this run at a certain point will stop being consistent, or at least they don't bring back or round out what they set up previously. So when Deathlock and War Machine shows up on the front steps of this general, Shield agents show up. One of them being led by this woman named Joseph. Forgot her first name, but her last name is Joseph. Uh, uh, and she's become like an important figure in this run for a while. And Nick sends her over with a group of Shield agents to try to prevent War Machine from bothering essentially the general as like essentially like some pseudo protection. It remain neutral, but also keeping War Machine from causing any political strife because it's going to be like a big deal. But War Machine and Deathlock managed to make it their escape and meet up because thanks to Cable, who did not just completely run away, shows up in the cell of Vincent and essentially rescues him. They teleport to some rebel forces where people that Deathlock and War Machine met up along the way to the general's compound, and to help fend off a lot of his soldiers that was harming the innocent. One of the rebel leaders shows them to Vincent. Of course, James is overjoyed, and Deathlock, considering that only because he only got involved because he saw one of Vincent's lectures one time and was inspired and everything like that. So that's why he got involved, to make sure he was safe. He viewed it as his job was done. So he kind of peaced out. It's like, I'm not trying to get involved in any kind of civil war, so this is as far as I go. But War Machine thanks him. So now War Machine takes it upon himself to take the fight to the general with the rebels. So he's trying to quell all this stuff so they ain't any further retaliation towards Vincent. So he walks up inside and pretty much confronts the general, who's still giving him lip despite this walking tank can easily rip him in half. And Shield agent Joseph decides to have her and her team stand aside and let the situation play out, because they're not going to get involved. That's one of their primary rules: don't get involved, because she knows what's going on here is wrong, and she wants to help War Machine, but she's like duty bound by Shield to not interfere and not allow War Machine to do him harm. But now that this rebel fighter is here, she's only tasked to not let War Machine do anything, but none stopping from this rebel leader doing anything. He's right here. It's like, let things play out. So the rebel leader shoots the guy dead into that situation. And War Machine tells the guy, look, you're the leader now. Please do better. Do not make me have to come back all the way here to deal with you because you wanted to be a new dictator. and he promised he'll do better. Do better, Senator. So while that is wrapping up, he's trying to rush back to get Vincent to take him back to the United States. But the advisor mysteriously shows up, in front of Vincent at gunpoint, and had this little back and forth, saying that he's pretty much like a footnote, blah blah blah, and just because he's he could be like a possible future threat to the advisor's master's plan. So he, because he's kind of like the Dr. King peaceful protest, blah 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 kind of thing. So he ends up shooting him dead right as War Machine shows up, and he disappears in thin air. And once again, like I said, we don't really see this guy ever again. Never resolve who this guy is. Try looking him up. Apparently, Marvel never has that out ever. Probably not even in a tie-in that he was in. So that is lame. Kind of left that low-hanging fruit to dangle. Okay. Da, da, da. So back in the States, now War Machine is pretty much in trouble, given the fact that he caused all this political upheaval, and now there's a hit essentially put on War Machine by this mysterious this corporate guy who hired this hitman, this what do you call it, kind of like a redneck type of dude, guy's name Defload, something like that, some very 90s type of name, who has like a special meta power. He's not a mutant, but he got this kind of meta power, essentially kind of every time he kills, he racks up a life to use. So if somebody kills him, he always comes back to life, but he loses the life that he gained from each kill that he applied. We'll get into that in a minute. So pretty much he is hired to take down War Machine, because I guess this guy had like a hand in what was going on with that general, which I'm not sure he was, supplying weapons or whatever. He had a stake in that. So because the War Machine, what he did, he has to take him out. And then James took it upon himself to finally take up on the offer Vincent provided to him to lead World Watch in this world peacekeeping organization, and not like peacekeeping like SHIELD or anything like that, like actual trying to help out different people in the country to offer aid and all the other stuff. And since James, they don't know James is War Machine, but since James has an association with Stark Enterprises and by extension War Machine, World Watch is getting bad press, saying like, oh, if this was World Watch is going to be sending out their little War Machine to deal with enemies of a particular country, this is not a good look. So James, as War Machine, goes to the UN to try to speak with everybody and say like, hey, I only did what all of you have failed to do, is to help the people of Imani to stop this clear dictator who had a hand in kidnapping and the death of this wonderful person who we all acknowledge was a great person. Nobody did nothing, so I stepped up. So where were all of you? If anybody has any complaints, how about the people of Imani? How about they raise any complaints? If they have any place, they're the only ones to say something. Oh, I'm pretty sure they don't, because I helped them out of that upheaval in the first place. So I'm pretty sure they have my back. So I don't need to answer to anybody but them. So while he's chewing out the UN, this redneck hitman shows up, burst in to take on War Machine, this guy only has like Uzi guns and stuff like that. It's like, dude, at the very least, you know who you asked to take down. A fully armored superhero. And you're coming in with him with like Uzis. That is so, oh my God, that's so dumb. That is so dumb. And it's like, you could at least, we show another instance later where he has like at least a better arsenal. But it's like, come on, that should be your first thing. It's like go against Superman with a crowbar. If I know who I'm going against, I need to probably do my research and see what is better suited to take the person down. So War Machine takes the fight outside and tries to knock the guy out. I don't know why he just don't bonk him on the head because he's wearing armor. He just bonk him on the head and knock him out. But he dives him into the water, and against his principles, he had to snap the guy's neck, to get him to stop. Because right now, his armor is going to cause him to sink, and his air supply was going to run out. It's not like he's wearing the hydro armor, so he only has a limited air supply. So in order to prevent him from dying, he has to kill this other guy, which doesn't sit too well with him. But the guy doesn't die because he had all this extra life left. I think at this point in time he had 11 and 12. So he's down to 1. So he gets up, and then he gets a call from his benefactor saying oh, I got another hit. I need you to take out James Rhodes. So he figured, it's probably easier just to take down James Rhodes first before I deal with War Machine. He tried to snipe this guy. Luckily, he had Agent Joseph with him because she quit S.H.I.E.L.D. and decides to work for Rhodey at World Watch as kind of like his personal bodyguard in a way. And luckily, she managed to peep the sniper, save Rhodey in a nick of time. Well, other security managed to take down the assassin, who, even though riddled with bullets, managed to come back to life by sacrificing the extra life he stored up. And somehow he got that monitor on his little wristband. It's like, how do you monitor that? It increases every time he gets a kill. It's like, how do you monitor that? It's not like he inputted it manually himself. It automatically adds and subtracts a life. We get a little bit of his backstory, how he got the powers, where he comes from an abusive household. He ends up killing his own daddy. And then he decides to work as a mercenary. He goes all the way to India, where he kills these thuggies. If you don't know what the thuggies are, they're the originators of the word, of assassins. And they worship their god, this Hindu god. And as he murdered all of those guys, as he was hired to do, this deity comes alive via this statue and presents him extra lives to the amount of the thuggies that he just killed. So now, in order to continue this awesome, continue to have this awesome powers that was bestowed upon him by this god, he has to kill more people for her as a blood sacrifice, essentially, so he can keep on with his semi-immortality. Now, back to the present, we see James and Joseph and another World Watch employee go to what is this South American place, I think. Cortina. Speak to this guy Antonio, because word was that there was these supposed mysterious deaths occurring in his country, not knowing what happened, because it's like, not only people of the area has seemingly missing for God knows how long, but also anybody that try to go in to offer aid, college students, these Doctors Without Borders, all these kind of people that try to go in there to see what's up, they all end up missing somehow. And so now World Watch got to get involved, and therefore War Machine got to get involved. So he inspects it himself. Now, this also ties into this corporate guy that Antonio is working with, because apparently they're doing some sus stuff in that region. So that's where they send the assassin to go to, while War Machine is gathering information and recording, this land that has all these skeletons underneath the land. He gets hit by the assassin with an adamantium bullet or a vibranium bullet. One of the two. And it's like, you should have probably start with that, given the fact that this guy is wearing thick armor with some arsenals on it. You coming in with freaking Uzis right out the gate. You probably should have started with like adamantium or vibranium. I'm pretty sure it's adamantium. Even though they're very rare, you probably just needed the one bullet just to hit like a vital area and be done with it. But he actually hit him in the stomach. But War Machine collapses the ground, which leads into a cavern, and War Machine ends up burying the guy there. And every time he suffocates, he loses a life, and he tries to dig himself out, but further he goes, he loses more and more life. So eventually, he just done. Once he loses up his last life, he is dead. And War Machine gets so bummed out about the fact that, he ends up having to take a life. Yeah, it was a bad guy. I mean, like, sure, like, no one wants to do that, but also consider the fact that you were in the military. It's like, it is kind of annoying that you don't want to ruin a character's reputation. It's the same thing how I feel about like Captain America, whereas like you're in the thick of a war, and I don't believe that at no point that you did not at least a couple of times actually have to take a life when it's killed or be killed in that kind of situation. So you acting like brand new about the feelings of taking a life. No, it's not pleasant. Not saying like, oh, you're military, so get used to killing. No, but the fact that like it will happen. It's not like a cop where there is like at least a fraction of a possibility that you won't have to pull the trigger and take a life of a person. But the possibility is still there. Military is even more so still there. You're going to have to take a life. And like you should be used to it. Or at least not all broken up about it that you have to take a life of a violent criminal, an assassin. That part didn't sit right with me as I watched him through this and watched him piss and moan about it. Um, I don't even think we even satisfied who was that mysterious board member either. Um, but he's so broken up about the fact that he took a life that he ends up contacting Hawkeye because I guess he was the closest one to understanding his position, and he's not like super powered in any type of way, and he would have had taken a life before. It's like, hey, you know, uh, like I'm having an uneasy time with this. Did you ever have a experience like this? How do you deal with it? Hawkeye regales James about the situation where there's this like local bar that he goes to, and one time he met a like a veteran detective who well, let me read this. Used to hang out with this local cop bar. I wanted to know what it was like to face the bad guys with nothing but your courage and your gun. There was one guy there who was a real piece of work. He shot 3 men in the line of duty and liked to brag about it. It's them or me, he said. But there was another one I got to be friends with, a rookie. Nice young guy, wife, baby girl. One night he was in bad shape. He fired his gun for the first time the week before, killed one, wounded another. He eventually went through all the internal affairs stuff. He used his weapon properly, but he was never the same afterwards. And he finally stopped coming in to drink. I heard he went home one night and used a gun to deal with his personal issues, to put it lightly. So, in Hawkeye's opinion, it all depends on how you choose to deal with taking a life. You can be like the veteran who, brags about it, or you can be like the rookie who got overwhelmed to the point where he could not live with the decision. But while he's offering that piece of advice, Hawkeye was already on a mission to look for a scientist friend of his who apparently was kidnapped. And it turns out it was kidnapped by a couple of Russian dudes who revived this being who was experimenting on with this cold-like kinetic energy thing he got going on. And apparently he was slumbering ever since the Cold War, not realizing it was long since been over. He's been in cold storage this whole time, giving Hawkeye and War Machine a run for the money. And Hawkeye, listened to War Machine, lit him up with some incendiaries to heat him up so he can actually take on this frigid, villain. And they temporarily dealt with him, and these Russian military men come out, pretty much confessed everything, and because that scientist, they semi-forced him to work on this sleeper agent essentially. But I say semi-force because he did it not out of sheer force, but more so curiosity. It was stupid. Anyway, they had to haul the guy in, but he didn't survive considering what was done to him. So the Russian guys are pretty much going to get brought up on charges for what they did. So that's the end of that little thing. But Hawkeye gave him some advice. with like a remark from James about like, man, you've been hanging out with Captain America too long. Uh, maybe the questions you keep, maybe wait a minute. Maybe I could, but I don't have the answers to all your questions, Jim. I'm not sure anybody does, but I do know that Hitler's like Rule, the general, African general, and psychos like Death Toll, the redneck assassin, and obedient soldiers like Cold Warrior, the frigid guy they just dealt with, uh, don't even ask those kind of questions. Maybe the questions you keep you honest. Maybe it's when you think you've got all the answers you ought to worry. It's like, I think you've spent too much time hanging out with Captain America. Which was like some solid advice from Hawkeye. It's like, yeah, it's like, as long as you're asking those type of questions, it's like, yeah, it keeps you, empathetic and human. But throughout these entire ordeal, War Machine's armor is, taking a bit of a beating, and he doesn't have nobody to fix up. And he's kind of sort of had to be forced to go to Tony Stark, who isn't dead, and he's still, haven't gotten to the point where he's going through his demon in a bottle story yet. So he's still suffering from like, a bit of alcoholism. And Tony is very perturbed at the fact that he's been monitoring James's comes and goings as of late, with him, going overseas and doing what he's been doing. And he's telling him like, okay, take off the armor. I gave you that armor because I thought you was a man of principle, but apparently I was wrong, because you should have been doing what he did. Of course, James called him a hypocrite, because the main times he took it upon himself to do whatever he needs to do for the sake of the greater good. We have to just all fall in line and understand. So, of course, it ends up in a classic War Machine versus Iron Man fight. But both of them are kind of sort of handicapped. Tony is pretty much like got a massive hangover, while War Machine's armor needs a tune-up. So neither one of them are in the best shape to actually have like a fair fight. All the while, the Mandarin's monitoring this entire situation, who has beef with both of them. So it's like a slugfest out in front of Stark Enterprises. But don't know why War Machine didn't think that Tony had like a trump card, considering he built all these armors. Tony implemented a failsafe to lock down James's armor, which should have done so from the jump as soon as he walked into his office. But now War Machine is pretty much stuck. But then it coincides with the Iron Man tie-in, where Tony, James, and ForceWorks has to deal with the Mandarin over in China, who's pretty much, trying to do a big massive takeover by implementing a plan where he neutralized using some kind of a combination of maybe like a spell and technology, or an alien technology, to kind of neutralize the region's technology, which includes Iron Man and Rhodes's armor. So bringing everything back to, pretty much like medieval period, times, where it's like zero electricity, trying to live like ancient China would have lived. Okay. A second. And a lot of these Force Works, that's a tongue twister. Force Works characters you might have seen if you watched the Iron Man 90 show, like Century, not Century with the S, Century like 100 years, Century, and this Native American type of dude who's actually an alien, helping out Rhodey, who's got his butt kicked by Mandarin and his forces with his armor pretty much, dead weight. So now they had to rescue Tony, who's in the capture of Mandarin, who's beating himself up because he's thinking like he, I guess at some point in like other tie-ins that he kind of made up with Rhodey to some capacity, but think he's dead now. So he's feeling horrible about it. So we see Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman, Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, and John Walker, U.S. Agent, who are part of Force Works, trying to do what they can to save China, stop the Mandarin, and rescue Tony. So they have to go old school with a lot of the technology that's still available, like riding horses, and James applied some ancient Chinese armor on top of his armor. I was like, for what purpose? Just to get a particular look, but it's like it's already armored. It doesn't make you lighter. It often makes you heavier, and he's still riding a horse who must be a strong ass horse because it's lifting God knows how much weight on top of your body weight. It's insane. Look at the look on that horse. It's like, God help me. And then of course, I kind of like this. It just reminds me of the Predator, where like you see James and Tony do that iconic hand slap. You son of a bitch. And of course, it's like, I don't know. It brings me back to that. It's like, of course. And of course, it's very 90s. I can't help but think but that. And it's like, God, you had like a perfect timing to have one of them say, Tony, you son of a bitch. Oh, God, I don't know why. It just brings a smile to my face. It's like the most hyped testosterone-filled moments for a guy is to see that iconic image where you just get these two guys who old pals and just like does that and it's got kind of the hand slap that rocked the world. And the only thing that comes even close is like Ryu and Cyclops dap, and more recently Sonic and Shadow the Hedgehog dap in Sonic 3. So yeah, the dap that hurls around the world. Anyway, so they all reconvene, working with some rebels in order to overthrow the Mandarin. But of course, one of the rebel leaders, doesn't have any kind of patience to strategize along with Tony, because their way, the highway kind of mentality. If we don't have any kind of patience, so they're kind of infighting. So until Tony decides to take James and U.S. Agent and other people to the location where not only they need to shut down the mechanism that kind of disables their technology, but also sends an extra armor casing for Tony to use in the fight with the Mandarin. So you see this like a little infighting. and it's obviously only going to help Mandarin because nobody can agree on nothing how they should proceed. This guy clearly wants to take the fight head on without any type of strategy in place. But that all does wrap up, but in like a Force Works, storyline. But now we're getting back to back to America. Everything has been dealt with, reconciled with Tony, fixed his armor, but because he's been gone for so long dealing with the whole Mandarin situation, one of his associates in World Watch, I forgot her name. Does it say in this panel? No. Well, I'm pretty sure it comes up at some point. The lady's getting, during the whole situation while Rhodey is dealing with the Contea situation and death toll, she's been getting like threats from tabloids about, oh, we know your secret. It'll be a shame to get this out there, so you should like come in for an interview and let us know about what's going on over the World Watch, blah blah blah. And she's been holding it down. And of course, just a reminder, it was the 90s, so they've been threatening to reveal the fact that she is a lesbian, and she got let go through previous jobs because of it. And she thought she would get like pushed back at this current job. That's why she kept it like a big secret and worried how they will react. Of course, they was very supportive, and James wasn't having none of that. The fact that anybody give her grief over the fact that who she choose to love. And because she was very forthcoming with her sexuality to him, he thought he should be just as brave and just admit to everybody that he was War Machine, and and because they've been having beef with War Machine and causing all this bad press. So now they understood, and they need to decide how they need to proceed moving forward, which obviously they will agree to have him on board and work with him as War Machine to deal with certain things that only War Machine can do, because not every enemy is going to listen to any type of diplomacy. There's going to be a time when you can be dealing with a particular enemy that will try to use violence to get their way. So this is around Christmas, and Rhodey, who's dating Rhea, says like, oh, make the decision. Okay, I want to take this to the next step. I want you to meet my parents. So she, pleases Punch about that. And of course, all the board members of World Watch decides to move forward with Rhodey, and they just, wish each other Merry Christmas at this dinner and all this other stuff. So, all the while making their, Rhodey has to go first because Ray has to deal with some business, and then she'll take a flight to Philadelphia later. So he goes to visit his parents and to set everything up for his girl. All the while, there's some villains in this neck of the woods who've been getting these homeless veterans to test out certain armors and weapons. So they utilize this to test out their own hardcore weapons, and one of them being it starts with an R. Carson. but his last name starts with an R. But Carson, who is kind of like a thrill seeker in a sense, set all this up. And then there's other guy named Aaron, but the main guy we'll be focused on is this guy, Loco, this semi-whitish guy. So they got a brand new armor, and they looks kind of like a demon in a way. They trying to show off that can easily be used for military applications, obviously, but they want to utilize it for themselves first, kind of like making money off of this. But while that's going on, Rhodey meets up with his parents and let them know about the girlfriend. And of course, once again, 90s, mind you, very guess who's coming to dinner moment, where they're none too pleased with the fact that Rhodey is dating a white woman. Now, I don't know that many people who grew up. I'm pretty sure there's, growing up, I'm pretty sure there was families out there in the world who are black families who probably would be a little put off by the fact that, or at least taken aback. I won't say put off, probably taken aback at the fact that, I will say taken aback. It all depends on if you give them a heads up first. So that way, if you just show up one day with a white girlfriend, I'm pretty sure they will be taken aback. But then once the initial shock for the few seconds goes by, they roll with it. At least that's how it is nowadays. But back in the 90s, it was kind of like, I want to say, I guess the word would be taboo. The fact that their son is dating a white woman who they don't even know yet, but I guess they lived in a different time where it's like you date within your own kind of situation, which thank God we kind of got past all that stuff, because you can't help who you fall in love with. Whereas like a white girlfriend, Latin girlfriend, or black girlfriend, it doesn't really matter. As long as she's like you get along with her and she's cordial and decent looking, it's like, hey. But of course, James doesn't like the idea that his parents are behaving like this. Don't know why you are you is this your first time them bringing this up? At no point when you was in high school, your parents never once say don't you dare bring no white girls in my house, boy. None of that stuff. It's you seem legit shocked that they had this kind of mindset, and you what, damn near 40 years old. So he went out to get some air, fooled in about to call ahead to warn this girl who's pretty much already, I guess, on her way, but it's she gonna have a rude awakening when she gets there. So one of the homeless dudes named Sigir ran off with one of the armors when it's supposed to have been just testing it out, or at least helping them test out the new armor. He thought he can get away, runs into the populated city, thought they wouldn't dare attack him there, but lo and behold, they did. So James get a ping on his suit or whatever technology to warn him about police response or what have you. So he shows up to deal with this mess. He fights Carson wearing armor himself, and since he doesn't have any kind of real combat experience, he usually gets knocked to the side. While Loco and the other guy shows up in the nick of time to face off against a War Machine. And Loco's armor, it kind of looks like a giant frog with a vent for a mouth. Probably the toughest one that Rhodey's dealing with. And he had to use darn near all of his arsenal just to push him back. But it wasn't enough. Eventually, they overpower him and they seemingly take out Sigurd, the vet, but he managed to escape the armor before it was annihilated. Brody does eventually take the guy to the hospital and he let him know about what happened. And of course, Rhodey just so happens to know Sigurd, given the fact that he grew up here. So he goes to meet up with Sigurd, and of course, given their interaction, he figures out that Rhodey is War Machine, and he challenges him to a fight, which doesn't sit well with Loco and the other guy. I think it's Arthur or something like that. And Loco's like, look, you made this wager, you deal with it. We're not going to back you up next time. So it's like, fine, I'll deal with myself. I'll beat him. Arrogant idiot doesn't realize what he's tangling with. But Loco knows that he's not going to survive the encounter. So they make plans to kind of their own to deal with War Machine when he deals with Carson. So in the mano-a-mano fight, of course, War Machine easily handles Carson, takes him out. But then Arthur shoots some kind of bow with some kind of EMP, knocks out War Machine. And we don't see that other guy anymore. We just kind of focus on Loco moving forward. They end up taking James completely overseas while unconscious. It's like 30 miles, not 30 miles, but 30-hour type of distance. It's like you was out for 30 hours. But whatever. So he's in this completely different country with Loco. Meanwhile, Ray does show up in Philadelphia to meet up with James's parents, and she got a rude awakening. We don't see the interaction, but clearly they ripped off the Band-Aid, let them know what's up. So we see her lying down. Hey, Mfae. So we have there's a panel with her laying down with a bunch of tissues, crying herself to sleep in lingerie for some reason. Like, why are you in lingerie while you're doing all this? He's like, I guess the panel needs to show off how sexy she looks, but clearly she's really upset. And James, it's gonna be a while before he even had this conversation with her about this whole ordeal, completely forgetting this whole entire thing for a good while. So it's like the writers here, yeah, I know, not even all that messy, just my clothes hanging up, but yeah, but it's like, man, the writers, man, that's what I'm saying. My biggest issue with this is the fact that there's no cohesiveness at all, where it's like you bring up somebody like the advisor, but don't square their circle. And then you bring up the fact that this whole situation between your girlfriend and the beef that she has with her parents, with your parents, you don't square that circle. So you kind of leave it on the table unresolved. And that is a glaring problem. That's one, at least around early comics, it's like a glaring problem I do not like. Yeah. Every once in a while I'll do is playing some comics. So yeah, I thought I'd bring my issues up while it's on the top of my mind before I end up forgetting them at some point at the end. So that's pretty much it with this group of slides. I'm halfway done. Well, so far, it's been a pretty easy going 2025. How about yours? So back overseas at this made-up country, pretty much. Oh, good, good. So back overseas, locals been feeding Rhodey some BS about this strife in his country, that he did all this with Carson in order to be able to fight back against these oppressors, blah, blah, blah. Sure, there's some degree of truth in that, but he's pretty much using Rhodey, which I'm glad that he understood that, yeah, he's trying to play me, but I'm playing him. I let him, do all this talking and looking around so that we can take me to spots where I can, like, peep what's going on. To see what his real goals are. So he takes down some enemies that was trying to hurt some innocent civilians. But it turns out that Loco is looking for this kind of weird tech thing, some apparatus or something. Hold on. That he want to use as some kind of new power source for himself, which wraps up in like a different tie-in for another comic. Don't know if it was Avengers or Forceworks. Pretty sure it's Avengers. So he takes down some flunkies and seemingly deals with Loco after he gets too overwhelmed by this power source. But, thinking he's dead, Rhodey goes back home, but not, we see the guy rise up and, who knows? Well, what happens to him in the next, whatever Avengers comic that he has a tie-in with. And I guess that wraps up there. So, no clue how his story ends. So, in the airport, he ends up contacting Scarlet Witch to inform them about the situation overseas. That, Scarlet Witch says, like, yeah, we'll handle it from there. So, yeah, it will be an Avengers tie-in that they'll deal with this local guy. Do you play games? Yeah. If you follow me on my YouTube channel, you'll see a bunch of video games that I've been like streaming. More recently, Marvel Rivals. So when Rhodey gets back home, World Watch is getting chastised by Nick Fury about the stuff that he's been going through, and it's like getting under Nick's skin. But he needs his assistance, because while Rhodey's been going through all this stuff, you've been wondering, like, what happened to his little secret agent lady, Joseph. There's been like little interludes during his whole vacation in Philadelphia during this period. There's been interludes where she's trying to help operatives deal with this neo-Nazi guy, and she ended up disappearing. Yeah, I haven't gotten around to learning Moon Knight or Wolverine just yet. right now just starting to learn Black Panther. But like my mains personally has been Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, and Punisher. So far, this is like my best characters. And Loki's probably like a good runner-up. Speaking of Nick Fury, they should add Nick Fury to War Machine and Nick Fury to Marvel Rivals. Now I'm thinking about it. Shit, like it's weird. I mean, I'm happy with like the Fantastic Four, and I'm super interested in seeing how Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm play out. But there's so many because I had a video. I made a video a couple of weeks ago. You can check out on my YouTube channel. You can check out the link. You can go to my YouTube channel. I made a video talking about what characters, at least a review about Marvel Rivals and my thoughts on it. But I also included like ideas on certain characters they could include in Marvel Rivals, like Thanos, because it obviously has to have the Infinity Gauntlet. But his super move should be able to wipe out half the field randomly. Maybe not on your own team, but the half of the opponent's team like randomly. Because obviously that has to be the move. But I don't want to get on like a whole tangent about that. I give my ideas on certain characters that should be brought in. But they did an impressive job with the look of a lot of these characters, especially the females. Like they did an impressive job. Everybody loving Squirrel Girl, and like the thickness of that girl is insane. Anyway, yeah, thank you, man. Slowly but surely building up, doing my best. Anyway, so Nick requests, or not request, that wasn't a request. Every time Nick Fury is involved, whereas the black eye or the white version, it's always an order. It's very, very rarely is a suggestion. Or very rarely he just asks. So he tells James that you need to follow the trail of Joseph, who has apparently traveled back in time, was taken back in time via these Nazis who have been taking 1995 technology back into the 40s to try to win the war for the Access powers. And they haven't heard back from him since. So James, takes it upon himself to go back in time to rescue Joseph and stop this guy from ruining the timeline. And he ends up, not only seeing a young Nick Fury, but who has Joseph with him, but he also sees a young Bucky and Captain America. Thanks, Emmy. Thank you. Appreciate it. So it's like a surreal moment for James, because it's like, wow. Not only like I've seen like Captain America, in his like prime years fighting the enemy, but he also has to make sure he doesn't say, it's already bad enough that they know that James and Joseph is from the future, but they don't want to tell too much about what transpires in the future, because it might ruin the time stream. But he doesn't have his armor with him because for some reason his armor got separated via the time travel. So it ends up being found by the enemy, who has it done lock and key. So they had to plan on getting James in the compound where they're holding his armor, so he can properly fight alongside them and stop the guy causing all this and take him back to the present. before they do any more further damage to the timeline. And of course, let's here to ask you: do you accept offers from designers? No. I'm good. You don't. I really don't accept people. I don't accept designs. I'm good on that. So, no, thank you. Anyway, while on the train to take him to the compound, Steve has some alone time with James, and he asks him, no, wait a minute. I think we're getting ahead of it. Sorry. Getting ahead of myself. We'll get to that in a second. So, Cap and Bucky is distracting people in front of the compound. It allows Fury and James to sneak inside to get James's armor, which I really love when I see like a good Iron Man War Machine suit up. But as he's waiting for the onboard computers and everything like that to reboot, in comes bursting, taking some inspirations from the armor's designs to build this giant Nazi, hulking armor piece. Ends, the fight ends up getting Nick killed, which really bothers James because, like, oh my god, this will irreparably damage the timeline because Nick is not supposed to die here. But I just want to point out there were certain slides I cannot use during this particular arc because the Nazi symbol and everything like that's very prominent. Back in the day, it's like, kind of like a free for all. So it's like, hey, it's whatever. But now it's like, very, very touchy and like, don't want my channel being taken down because of the symbols. So it's very limited amount of slides for this particular arc. Anyway, they took down, War Machine managed to take down this enemy, and everybody's sad that Fury died, but only Joseph and James knows the implications this might have for the future, and they don't know what to do about that. But they can't let the others know that he wasn't supposed to have died here because they need to keep their faith going. Speaking of which, once they make their way to try to stop the other time traveler who's helping the enemy, James and Steve have like a moment, and Steve asks honestly, please tell me, like, is the future has gotten better? Do we win and everything like that? And James, lets them know, like, look, I'm not going to lie to you. There still will be some issues in the future, but trust and believe it is 1,000,000 times better than what's been going on right now. So we will win. But he refuses to let them know how we get there, like Cap being frozen in the ice. That will happen eventually, pretty soon. And on top of that, Bucky turning into the Winter Soldier. Well, no, of course, this is way before the whole Winter Soldier situation. So he doesn't tell him that Bucky dies throughout this entire thing. But of course, this is, like I said, way before the whole Winter Soldier thing comes about. I don't think Winter Soldier was invented just yet. At least I don't know. I'm pretty sure the Winter Soldier, in the comics, James Barnes. When was it invented? as the Winter Soldier. 2004. Yeah. Yeah. So, the Winter Soldier didn't make his first appearance until 2004. Uh, so yeah, and so this War Machine comic is way, I was like a good decade before his Winter Soldier creation. So he was careful not to tell too much of what's going to happen. So they managed to catch up with that time traveling Nazi, who was related to the guy who was part of the Hitler's right hand men. But as War Machine Joseph and that guy was about to travel through time to go back to the present, he tries to threaten Joseph's life, but War Machine has to pull the trigger and kill this guy. And of course, it's like he's once again broken up about it. It's like, dude, look, I know you don't like the idea of taking a life. Nobody does. But if there's any moral freebie that you get to have, is taking out a Nazi. Look, I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and one of my favorite kills that I pulled out in that game was I was riding by. It's still, to this day, it's still one of my favorite. It's like, it makes it goes like that, meme from Emperor's New Groove. Like, it makes it go like that. Every time that happens, or every time I think about it, it's like I'm riding by and I see some group of Klansmen burning across. So I take out a stick of dynamite, lit up the fuse, and toss that sucker in the middle of their gathering and watch them blow up sky high and take out my rifle and take out the stragglers. Favorite kills I did in a video game ever. Gets me off every time. So like, I don't feel bad, like, doing that. And it's like, I know it's fictional, but it's like, I don't feel sorry. Like, why would anybody? It's like, dude, he's a Nazi. It's like morally, he's a freebie. It's like, I don't like you would not, nobody would really lose sleep over this. But you gotta get James to go through some kind of grief, I guess. But heck, you got over that kill of Death Toll pretty fast. Anyway, as he's traveling back to the future, I guess, because it wasn't a time traveler they end up killing. It was actually the guy's father. And so that since he did not have that boy yet, taking him out erase what that boy will eventually do, which also includes bringing it causes like a paradox, I guess. So he wasn't around to become Hydra, go back in time, deliver all the present day technology to the past. So therefore, that hulking monstrosity wouldn't be able to kill Nick. So Nick survives. That's why he's in the present now. But his armor didn't survive the trip at all this time. And so now he's kind of bummed out. He's half grateful and half, bitter because he, War Machine's been a part of his life for a while. So he's, having to go of it pretty much. So now he's trying to take a bit of vacation by going on some kind of fishing trip where the town is kind of being filled up with a bunch of agents from different departments searching for a mysterious figure that's hurting the locals. And this is the part where the not animation, but the illustration gets more pitiful as the issues go on. And obviously, they changed the artists clearly. And that's where like Rhodey ends up meeting with this seemingly agent named Sky, who at first I thought it was Sky Daisy Johnson Quake, who is an Inhuman, but no, different Sky person. Who knows more what's going on than she lets on. And James also meets up with Hawkeye, who's like investigating this spot as well. And they're getting accosted by this gray dragon type creature. And Sky and Hawkeye eventually gets knocked out. And while James is trying to do what he can, but since he doesn't have his armor, he's kind of helpless. That's until he sees this glowing orb that calls to him, and it gets progressively stupid moving forward, just so you know. So, it calls to him because it was the one that kind of somehow incepted his brain into coming on a seemingly fishing trip just to get near him to imbue him with this alien technology that looks but ugly. Don't know where was the mindset in this. It kind of reminds me of what they did with Guy Gardner in DC when he lost the access to not only his Green Lantern ring but his Yellow Lantern ring. No, I think it was before the Yellow Lantern ring. He didn't have his Green Lantern ring, and he became like warrior with his alien technology thing that kind of makes him, turn his body into like guns or something like that. It was completely stupid. Trying to force something that was, okay, why did you waste your time getting rid of like his most notable thing, and you're trying to force something else on him that you're either trying to sell toys or it's just some kind of weird mandate. I'm not sure, but it's stupid as all hell. You shouldn't even call yourself War Machine at this point because it looks like something out of some B-list sci-fi movie, which Sky knows more than she lets on because it's some kind of what do they call it, a Warframe something they called it. Some alien technology is kind of like utilized like a it's kind of like the Blue Beetle armor, where it's like attached to people to utilize to fight against like threats, whatever. It's kind of akin to that. Overly complicated. That's all I gotta say. So, James utilized this new gear to take out this dragon. He kind of had to learn how to use this on the fly, but it responds to his thoughts. He eventually takes out the dragon, and now the suit is kind of like receded inside him. So now he got these kind of bangles and this weird symbol on his chest. And Sky, doesn't want to give too much information because it's kind of like testing him to see if he's ready for what's to come, blah, 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 nonsense, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, it doesn't last too long, thankfully. So on the way back, he further tests out the suit by taking on this kind of roided out idiot who takes some kind of experimental steroids that's makes him almost comparable to the Hulk, which Rhodey takes him down easily by utilizing these little drones to suck up the chemicals that makes them conscious, something or other. Stupid. And for temporarily, Sky disappears while Rhodey goes back home, and he gets confronted by a U.S. agent who asks him for his help because Iron Man, back at Force Works, accused of Hawkeye of hurting somebody. He has some kind of supposed video evidence of that happening. But given the fact that, of course, this is, happened after he left. It supposedly happened right after he left from helping Rhodey take down that dragon. And Rhodey doesn't believe that Hawkeye would do such a thing because, why would he? Where's the evidence? Something's fishy. And of course, U.S. agent doesn't believe this one bit either. And of course, they don't believe Iron Man because Iron Man always got, there's always something up with Tony every once in a while. And so one of these new recruits takes Hawkeye out. So he's kind of comatose temporarily until they get further into an investigation to figure out what happened. So James involved himself to figure things out. They look through the video, and he has one of his guys to look through it. And one of James's men at World Watch explains to him there's only three people in the entire world who can possibly doctor something like this. Is either Reed Richards, me, or Tony Stark himself. And given the fact that, okay, it's not the guy that works for James, and definitely Reed Richards is nowhere near West Coast. So the only, by process of elimination, it has to be Tony. And they got to figure out why and what for. So they decided to take Hawkeye out of Force Works custody, but the personnel there ain't trying to have none of that. But they managed to stop her while escaping with Hawkeye, and they rendezvous with Black Widow, who always, has Hawkeye's back. And they kind of lay low for the time being until they figure out how to deal with this. Then some group of soldiers come in to try to take Hawkeye. They end up fending them off as best they could. Look at this. I'm glad I saved this particular panel because look how ugly looking this. It's like overly complicated. I don't know what was the mindset behind all this. Maybe because they didn't know what to do with War Machine or something. So they just threw in this, because obviously this is like a, different artist. They kind of just threw something together. The whole entire thing it stops being interesting after the ordeal with like the time travel thing. But even then, its major issue is just like tying up loose ends in certain narratives. Like with the girlfriend and the parents situation. And speaking of which, Joseph, who was on that time travel trip, is going through some kind of time dilation sickness or something. She is like going, getting older, which she has to be taken to the hospital for this. And of course, the curious as to why James is not suffering from the same sickness, it's probably because the suit he's wearing is preventing any kind of deterioration on his own parts. So eventually James confronts Tony, and Tony's obviously now behaving like himself, and once again having like a War Machine versus Iron Man fight. But it's not even War Machine technically, but I guess it's a better fight now than last time because this armor doesn't belong to Tony, so he can't just automatically shut it off. But clearly something wrong with Tony, because Rhodey, who hesitates on taking him down, Tony gives a mortally wounded shot at James before escaping, which leaves him with Force Works members trying to figure out, how to proceed forward in dealing with Tony. Now, this goes in another Force Works tie-in, and just so you know, because I look it up briefly, what's going on with Tony, and this whole entire thing was like a Kang, the Conqueror, machinations. So he was one behind all this kind of stuff and framing Hawkeye and doing something with Tony that kind of makes him kind of, weird. So that is resolved in a different story. So Rhodes ends up going to this space station that's in danger of colliding into Earth's orbit and, possibly hurting a lot of people. So he flies up into space with the suit kind of sealing everything up so he can actually be able to operate in space. He goes inside, try to figure out to detonate this thing and destroy it, completely before it enters Earth's atmosphere. That's when Sky just mysteriously just shows up out of nowhere with a spacesuit, no less. Giving vague explanations as to who she is and how she ends up seemingly here out of nowhere in space and what the suit about. She just tells him that you got a duty. Don't worry about it. And that's like these nothing answers. Man, I really do not like this arc. It's so. Like, I was debating whether or not to even continue on after the time travel arc when he lost his suit. But if you're reading this War Machine story, I would say stop after the time travel arc, because you don't need to read the rest of it. The art in this is even, I would say it bothers me, but it's just like I really rather not look at it for too long. It is very lazy in my opinion. But then War Machine gets confronted by another person wearing similar armor as him. He ends up mortally wounding Sky, and he interfaces with this alien creature and sees through his mind his travels, that he's gone when he got the armor. He's a mercenary. He goes to place, taking out fools and serving under this mysterious figure that created this armor and sending it out to people. Don't know. Honestly, have not cared. Don't even bother even looking up about what it was all about, because it's completely stupid and doesn't obviously last long. But because that interface kind of messed with this guy's mind, he's kind of like, like a vegetable, and his suit is about to, detonate because of the force interface or something. So James escapes out of the station with Sky back to Earth as it explodes, taking out the station before it threatens the planet, and she dies, saying like, the suit. You deserves the suit because you two belong together, and there's more things to come that you need to face, and it will help you. Blah blah blah. Before she dies. So you see, like, him taking on the Brood and everything like that. So he's been on his own little adventures himself. Yeah, it's so dumb. I'm sorry, it just is. Don't leave it too long. Now that you're bonded to the warmare, warwear. That was what the suit is. Those suits are called warwear. Only death can free you. as it now frees me. The days are numbered, Jim Rhodes. My master is coming. Who? Well, honestly, I don't care. Whatever. Okay. Final slide. So James comes back home, uh, uh, being notified about what happened to Joseph. And Ray does show up and confronts him about not only not calling her back, not one time, and fair enough, she has every right to feel upset, but only on top of all that, apparently, James's parents told her about some kid he somehow has, which probably turns out to be a freaking lie because it's never brought up in any type of Marvel comics ever since then. And that's what gets her really upset, because the fact that he held that, she thinks he knew about that and held that secret to himself. So James doesn't understand what the heck is going on. He says, like, yeah, like, I had girlfriends before, but it's like, how do you, clearly, yeah, you had girlfriends before, but how do you not know if any of them were pregnant or whatever? How did it end? What transpired? How does your parents know, but you don't, and they never brought it to your attention? Clearly, there's a big bald-faced lie by your parents. Just to, as he points out, just to figure out a way to get rid of her, because they don't approve of her. And the doctors want to run tests on James, considering the armor he's wearing is alien in some capacity, and since it's preventing him from suffering the same condition as Joseph, which is a shame. Well, suffering the same condition as Joseph, they can utilize to probably help her, but it's a shame considering that she's honestly one of the best parts of this run. And it's a shame how they kind of do her in the writing. The fact that this straight up just killed her off. Spoiler, she dies from all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of like a shame, because she was kind of like a cool character. And she wouldn't have probably even gotten in this condition, in this situation, if she didn't decide to team up with James in the first place. Who knows? But I feel bad for that character. So they try to go run some tests on him, but then some other SHIELD agents tries to take them. Rhodey ain't having none of that. So obviously they're about to square up. Anyway, yeah, this is the part where she confronts him about the whole situation. But temporarily, it seems like everything is fine with Joseph, where she's back to her regular age. But it didn't last long. They run her back to the ICU. She dies on the table. You would think like they could easily have set up some kind of romantic relationship between Joseph and Agent Joseph and James. There's moments where he keeps calling her baby, and there's like little moments like they get kind of close to each other. It's kind of like, man, you clearly wanted to do something with these two, but you didn't lean into it. I would have leaned into that, because it would have been better drama than this whole warwear bullcrap. But then this forced little melodrama with like a kids that somehow James supposedly has but never knew about. But she decides to give him grief about it. Clearly he would not have known. So anyway, this Agent Groom tries to take Agent Joseph, but James ain't have none of that, so he easily handles those creeps. And they thought at first he killing this agent, but no, he just destroys his, because he's wearing like a mandroid Tony Stark invented suits that he provided shield agents, but it only took off the head but not the man head. So unfortunately Agent Joseph dies. James trying to reconcile things with Joseph, and while he's packing his stuff up, because he pretty much like talks with like the people at World Watch, saying like, look, I'm causing more problems than I'm solving. You guys, I'm stepping down. You guys can handle this from here, because he's not doing nothing from World Watch. He tries to, which once again they kind of dropped the ball on, where it's like, why you introduce World Watch? You don't even see him do much with it. It seems like they dropped the ball on a lot of story beats here. So he pretty much like call it quits, steps down from World Watch, and tries to move on with Ray. But then Groom shows up at one of his hotel rooms and try to go mano a mano again, but once again get his ass kicked. Very handily. Don't know why he even bothers. And then James, it all ends with James riding with Ray to I don't know, back to West Coast or back to New York, who knows. And that's where it all ends, pretty much. And yeah, if it would have ended after the whole time travel arc thing, I would give it like a good average kind of run, like a comic run. But tacking on the wardware situation, it's like so lame. And the fact that the way they killed off Agent Joseph is terrible, because it's like she was like a actual fun character, but then not tying in or wrapping up that loose thread with the whole parent situation, which you kind of left dangling. Why'd you add that little unnecessary melodrama if you're not going to tie that up? But anyway, yeah, there's a couple of things that they left hanging. They don't tie up. Man, they could have done so much better with this War Machine, especially if this was supposed to be his like first solo run. They did a terrible job. But anyway, that was War Machine. Could have done better. But yeah, I think I have an idea of what next comic. It's gonna be a Marvel comic again, but I have an idea of what the next Marvel comic I want to do next go around. But let me know what you guys think of War Machine as a character, and I will see you guys in a little bit as I get back to playing some more Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. But yeah, I'll see y'all soon, and take care. Peace, everybody.